A lot of talk and confusion in the industry surrounding commodity malware. Stick around to find out what it's about.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
Thank you for tuning in to the CySA Plus show. We are talking about commodity malware. What the heck are we actually talking about, Dan?
That's a great question. And if you have, just if you figure it out, let me know. There is some loose definitions around commodity malware. Commodity malware is a bit of a murky area in
Shades of
cybersecurity.
gray.
There are many shades of gray when it comes to this. I'm going to do my best to try to give you some concrete anchors that you can hold on to when it comes to that. So that if you encounter it, which you probably will, if you're a cyber analyst, security analyst, this is a commodity type malware. So let's start off with the definition, or loosely defined anyway, and let's define what we mean when we say commodity malware. I like to say that I love it when terms basically embezzle their definitions. It's really helpful for us because then you can just go, well, I know what commodity means. It means something that is available to the general public as a good. And typically we think of things like food, right? Or what's another thing that would be a commodity? Hardware for your computer. That's a commodity. Something you go to the store and you buy it and everybody can have the same thing, right? It's very generalized. It's very ubiquitous. That's a commodity. And of course, malware is malicious software. So commoditized malicious software. That's really the idea, basically, is that I can go out into the interwebs, maybe lurking around in the dark web, could be that, but not necessarily, to get malware. That's the basic beginning. That's where I wanted to start with this thing and define that. So it is meant to be an off-the-shelf solution for someone to be able to engage in hacking activities. All right. So why do we, as cybersecurity analysts, need to be aware of this? Because it's probably the most common type of malware that things like your antivirus, anti-malware, EDR systems are going to flag for you. I made the joke with Wes this morning about, so basically commodity malware is easily defined by anything your AV picks up. If it picks it up and knows about it, it's most likely what we would consider commodity malware. So hopefully that helps out.
You know what I call that?
What?
Malware.
Yeah. See, now you start to see why this is a little bit of
back and forth.
A muddy area, because you're like, well, what are we contracting? Sure. If basically malware is commodity malware, why don't we just call it malware? Which would be a great question. A good question. Wes, do you know why we do that?
No, I absolutely have no clue.
He's without clue.
I'll just give it another acronym. That usually works in IT.
Yeah, it does. That's a good way to go. But we can differentiate it a bit. So that kind of brings us to our next thing is like, how do we compare it to other types of malware? How is it? So if I set them side by side, how would I go, well, this is commodity malware and this is something else. And that something else is typically defined as advanced malware, or what's another? I think advanced malware is probably the best way to put it and the most ubiquitous term to describe something that's not commodity malware. It's funny, I almost should be having a show about advanced malware and not commodity malware. I gotta just go malware and then advanced malware, right? So there's the idea. But you might hear that term commodity malware, and that's the whole purpose of this episode, is to familiarize you with that and how it differentiates from more advanced malware. And this would be something that was used by APT groups, right? The malware that an APT group would be using, let's set the stage. I'm a hacker. I've decided I want to make some money doing this, or I've got a target in mind, probably for money. Let's just call it what it is. Money is a big motivator for these people. And I need to get the ball rolling. I need to get something. I just want to get some money generated. What can I do? Well, I can just go out to the internet. I can find something like WannaCry, right? And I can attack Southeast Asia. All of it. Just go crazy. Start scanning all those IPs and create a phishing campaign that's very generic, very general. And I am going to get, let's say I was able to scan, let's use 1 million things, or I was able to send out 1 million different phishing emails, and I got 1% of that to come back, and the average take on that ransomware, we'll say, was $500 in Bitcoin. So 1% of $1 million is 100,000, and then 100,000, that's $500,000 I just made. I did a pretty good day at work, right? But I didn't really focus in on anybody. I didn't look for a specific type of, maybe I just grabbed something and said, oh, WannaCry looks good. That's a known thing. It's going to be a general vulnerability, and they're going to happen. When I find it, I'll be able to exploit it, and there we go. I'm good to go. Yay, go me, right? That's commodity malware. That's the purpose of it, is to just kind of grab that low-hanging fruit. Whereas advanced malware, when we're comparing these things side by side, what does that do? This is most likely an APT group, something to that effect, a more sophisticated hack where I'm going to customize my malware. I am going to take time to do a lot of reconnaissance against not only the target systems, but the people that are running them, so that when I create a phishing campaign, it's very pointed, it's very specific to those people, right? So this is getting into the idea of targeted versus untargeted. With commodity malware, it's typically being an untargeted attack. We're starting to see commodity malware used in more targeted attacks. Again, more of that muddling and murkiness that we talked about earlier. So if you get a little confused by this, you're not the only one, okay? We're just trying to bring some clarity to it for you, right? But that more targeted, more sophistication, more customization into the attack, the vector, the vulnerabilities that were discovered by doing good reconnaissance by an advanced group or hacker person, that's really what separates the sheep from the goats in this one, okay? So hopefully that helps you understand that a bit more. And if you start seeing the idea of commodity malware, you're not as lost in the woods as you might have been if you've never heard the term, or if you've just vaguely been familiarized with it. Hopefully that helps differentiate what's being talked about.
All right, a lot of terms and definitions. Dan, on this one, can you give us maybe some sampling or some examples?
Yeah, I'll do my best at that. What I did was I went out to the old interwebs, right? Because this is supposed to be stuff you can pretty easily get your hands on. There's a GitHub repository called the Zoo, and the Zoo contains a lot of really good examples of known malware that someone could just grab and use. I like to use it for testing purposes, so I create a sandboxed environment, and then you can start doing more like malware analysis to see what malware analysis process looks like, and B, what kind of commodity malware you might encounter out there in the wild. And it'll range from old to young as far as age appropriateness, but it's a lot of good examples and can give you an idea of what this looks like. So here we go. Here is I'll make sure this link is available in the learning resources for you, so don't worry about if you aren't able to see it, but there you go. It's at GitHub, and it is the Zoo. But as you can see, we've got quite a few examples from which to choose from. Black Energy. Let's see if I can find one most people might be actually like familiar with. Some good stuff. Equation Group. So that was the NSA stuff we talked about in another episode. The Equation Group was well, that's the NSA. And Fancy Bear. Fancy Bear's APT group. So they created some malware. I like how it says some lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my. Friday the 13th. That's a fun one. JS.lame. Let's see here. It's a keylogger. Some Linux malware is available here. Try to find. I bet WannaCry. We mentioned WannaCry. There's Petya, right? Ransomware.
Down at the bottom of your screen.
Bunch of ransomware. Yep. There's WannaCry right there. So this is stuff I can just go out, download, grab it, and if I were a threat actor, I could possibly use this with very little to any modification for my own ends. Very simplistic, right? Grab it off the shelf. Another one that I'd probably consider usable as malware is something like PowerShell Empire. So if you're going after Windows stuff, if I do /empire, it's going to fire up PowerShell Empire. And in here, I'm able to create things like listeners. A lot of times this is used for post-exploitation, but I can also use it for exploitation as well. And the packages that it generates would be caught by most antiviruses, if not all of them. I haven't run the packages that they generate into something like VirusTotal recently. I'd be interested to see if it passes any of them, honestly, because it's pretty well known. This tool has been pretty well burned. You can do some obfuscation techniques, but that would start turning it into more of an advanced threat than it is out of the box, right? This is something you can go to GitHub. As you can see, there's the web link for it right there. You can go to GitHub, download it, install it, run it, and it's very easy to use, and it should be simple to get going. Let's generate, let me show you what I mean on how to generate, how easy that is. So if I just do things like help, it'll help you with what you're trying to do. And if I want to use, what I would need to do is create an agent. So I can just say agents, and then do help again if you're confused. And you can, is it not, it's a stagers. That's what I need to do. Use stager, and then do that. And here's all the different stagers. These are little pieces of malware that will reach out to grab more malware to get those connections going. You'll see under Windows, we've got OS X, and these multis should work as well in Linux. So let's say I wanted to do a Windows one. I could create an HTA file. I could do a BAT file, a link file, VBS, XML, macros for, right? This is well-known attack vectors. So let's say I wanted to use Windows, and we'll use just launcher.bat. There's a batch file. And then I chose L1, which is the listener I already have created. Hit enter, and now I can help. I can remember the generate. That's it. Generates. So now it says the stager output was written to temp launcher.bat. Now I have my malware. This is off the shelf. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Grab that launcher.bat, stick it in as an attachment in a phishing email, and wait for the listener to say, I've got connections from such and such agent from such and such a place. I'm like, yay. Now I can go to work and gain that money, right? So that's my best bad guy. I don't have a good mustache to twist. Yeah, right? So there you go. There's some examples. Hopefully that helps you out. That's always my goal, is try to give you some good stuff you can sink your teeth into. So I'd highly recommend playing around with both of those things for all the reasons that I've suggested. As far as security analyst not being a bad person, don't do that. If you don't like that, get a slap on the wrist for that one. But there you go, Wes. Hopefully that's what you were looking for.
Absolutely gives us an example. So remember, when we talk about commodity malware, we're talking about ease of use, very opportunistic versus other types of malware that are typically more targeted and a lot more advanced. We've got a lot more coming in the CySA Plus shows, and we hope to see you in the upcoming episodes.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.